Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Richmond, Indiana, Thursday, March 12th, 2020, to order at this time. If I could get the roll call, please.
Jeff Cook.
Here.
Terry Harden Davis. Joe Green. Aaron Roberts.
Here.
Sayward Salazar.
Here.
We do have a quorum this evening, and just for information, this evening any votes would have to be a unanimous vote. Yes for approval for all three. It takes at least a minimum of 3 votes for this board to approve, just for the information of any petitioners in the audience tonight. If we could go ahead and stand and do the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes for the February 13th, 2020 meeting?
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Sir.
if there's no changes or alterations, I move that we accept the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. And it passes. Proof of publication.
Thank you. This notice was published in advance. It states the time and place of the hearing and the items on the agenda for this hearing. This notice is in order to hold the public hearing, and I would request the board make a motion to accept the proof of publication.
I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the proof of publication. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. All right. New business. We will move to BZA 4-2020, petition of Richmond Mall LLC. Go ahead and step forward, sir. I assume you're the representing agent?
Yes, I am.
If you go ahead and state your name and address, please.
So my name is Rob Johnson. I'm a representative of the owners of the Richmond Mall. My address is 3615 Point Comfort Lane, Augusta, Georgia.
Very good. If you want to go ahead and share your petition with us, please, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've got a graphic, but I see you've got a computer set up, so you may have the screen. I'm sure you've got the petition in front of you with the signage, but I'm happy to bring that out. So I appreciate your time. I'm here on behalf of the owners of the mall regarding signage at the property. A little bit of background: the mall is the enclosed mall is a unique shopping experience in that the tenants lack the exterior presence and therefore disadvantaged as compared to a traditional shopping center. Therefore, the mall and the tenants rely heavily on exterior signage, in which they currently do not have. We are continuing every day to try to find new tenants, but we feel it's just as important the tenants we keep, because their sales and their growing sales attract other new tenants. And so that's something that we as the mall owners, the community, all have a hand in. And so to that end, we are always looking at how can we develop exterior signage, how can we give tenants a better competitive advantage in the marketplace. I guess the dynamic over the past years of the enclosed shopping mall has gone from the anchor stores. They traditionally drove the traffic to the mall, and then the small shops, they gained from that draw. However, that dynamic has been evolving and changing over the years now that small shops are equal to, or in some cases, more so than the anchor tenants. And so we feel it's important to continue to evolve our signage program and continue to try to figure out how can we help these tenants, how can we drive their sales. Again, it's very important to keep the tenants that we have, because again, their sales translate into new tenants being more interested in the market. However, once one tenant leaves and another tenant leaves, then we get a bad progression of events, and that's what we're here trying to prevent. So as part of our request, and really it's on behalf of the tenants nowadays, in order to stay, one of the mandates that they were putting forward is that they have signage on the right-of-way. They will not go in an enclosed mall unless they do. And so when it comes to time for renewal, or when we're talking to new tenants, that's a very specific thing that they ask for. We used to do digital reader boards in which we would flash various tenants' names and ads up on the screen. However, that doesn't give them 100% presence 100% of the time. So again, we are continuing to evolve our process and allow as many tenants as possible, within reason, on our boards, and have static displays rather than motion displays, which has been some of the concerns on reader boards in the past. And so we've added additional 12 spots on the power line that you see before you as compared to the 4 anchors. So we do have Dillard's, JCPenney, Dunham's, Office Max. We've tried to do everything first class. Our intent is not just to throw a sign up that's half put together, but add stone accents at the bottom, have some architectural features, have some dynamics that change. And so we feel that that's, again, in keeping with trying to keep the corridor around the mall in good repair and not just have a bunch of signage and a big sign that really doesn't show anything. And so I come before you today to ask for a variance to increase the size allowed by 211.87 square feet. There was actually a typo within the document, and I checked that again today, and that would take the total to 377 square feet plus the topper that says Richmond Mall. So that you may or may not have seen that, but I wanted to bring to light that is one change that's a part of this. And so we had shown 211.87 increase, but I wanted to clarify the total that we're talking about.
And that was not published.
The total was not published?
The higher amount was not published, no. It's an increase.
So are you, to clarify,
Sure.
make sure you are increasing the signage 211 or 300 increasing?
211.
Okay, so the total space would be the 66 plus the 211, which would come up to your...
Yes. Oh, well, plus the topper, because the topper was not specifically called out in the petition, the square footage of the topper. So the sign increase area of 211.87 square feet from what we have now.
Okay, so because of this, because that was not properly advertised, and it's an increase in what was being advertised, I mean, you could go ahead and hold the public hearing and open the floor for public hearing, but I'm going to recommend it be tabled so that we can republish it with the accurate amount, and then you would have to keep public hearing open and then open the floor back up next month.
Or we could just table it all together and not have any public hearing tonight?
I mean, they're here, and anybody who is here tonight, can go ahead and speak. I would hate to waste anybody's time if somebody doesn't want to come back again next month. I'm going to recommend that you open public hearing and then just table it and leave public hearing open.
Okay.
And I apologize for that, because I wasn't sure how it was presented and how it was published, other than the 211 square feet of increase.
So with the topper with the Richmond Mall area, is that what you're talking about? That was not included in the total?
So the proposed new surface area, so we've got an existing surface area of the Richmond Mall, and then we have the existing surface area of the signs that were in place, which was Dillard's, JCPenney, Dunham's, and Office Max. And so the way the petition was written was that we're proposing new surface area in the amount of 211.87 square feet, which is how it's written in the petition.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Under describe the variance, we had said proposed new surface area. So again, we're still keeping within that same petition that we're requesting an additional 211.87 of new area.
Sure. Okay, I'm with you now.
So I don't know if that makes a difference.
Right. Do you want to continue on with your proposal, or are you finished with that, or with what you have to propose to us this evening?
No, I mean, I think we think that it's a good look for the mall. We think in the size of the property it's in keeping with that, and actually probably still a little on the small scale as compared to other enclosed malls of that similar size. We've tried to do it again with first class aesthetics, and so we think we've tried to think about the ordinance, think about the community, think about the surrounding properties, and then go forward with that as well as our tenants and try to give them a better advantage.
Any questions for the petitioner?
I do have one question, and maybe I just heard wrong, but I thought I heard 377 square feet for a total sign area. Is that...
That is correct.
And that includes the topper?
Let's see, 211, that does not include the topper, no, sir.
So 211 and the 66 existing is 277.
Right, the 66 was incorrect, that's actually 141.18.
Okay.
That's where the difference was. So the request was for a proposed new surface area of the 211 square feet. That was what the petition was for. It really didn't calculate beyond what was existing in the topper.
I was just trying to make the
and the-
math work.
No, sure.
So, if we have to republish this, should they include the additional square footage, correct the existing square footage, and add the topper in there so we get a total aggregate for the whole sign square footage?
I don't know that we need to necessarily correct what is currently existing. What's currently existing would have been legal nonconforming. As far as the topper, I think we just look at the area of the sign itself. I'll let Matt confirm that.
Yeah, that's correct.
Because I guess the way, if you don't mind me interrupting, sorry. The way we were looking at it is the Richmond Mall and the other signage that's existing was already there. So that's why we had just said, hey, we're requesting an additional 211 square feet to form the bottom 9 boxes. And so that part of the request is accurate.
All right.
I guess my question is back to Kim again. The way it was published was incorrect because it says 66 and not the 141?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Because
Yes,
his,
it was-
the request is to increase the sign by 211 square feet, and that's what was published, correct?
We worded in such a way that it's to increase the sign surface from 66 square feet to 211.87 square feet. So that's where your total square footage factors in. So
And because the 66 is incorrect, we
the
have to
66 would be what the UDO call, or is that what it is?
I believe what's incorrect would be we're saying that the total square footage implied by saying from 66 to 211, that 211 is implied to be the new total sign area, rather than the 377.
Okay.
Because I think it should either be the UDO requirement up to what they're asking,
From what the UDO requirement is to what they're asking, or from what's existing.
or from what's existing.
Yeah, that's.
So,
And I think it was written originally as what's existing to what's proposed, from how we had originally
Okay.
read it,
okay.
which is an error.
So, Matt, you're gonna work with the petitioner to get the right publication for the next meeting,
Yeah, absolutely.
so it gets published out correctly. But it'll be not the next meeting, but the meeting after, correct?
It would be for next month.
Would we have 30 days if you're gonna publish it tomorrow then?
It's 10 days,
Okay,
10-day publication.
okay.
Okay, so the publication was worded such that it was a total to a total, rather than just for the request for the increased additional square footage area that we'd originally applied for.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
I have no questions.
I have no questions. Thank you, sir. If you could go ahead and have a seat.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll go ahead and open up as the board. All right, if we open up for public hearing then?
Yes.
Okay. We'll go ahead
Thank
and open up for public hearing. Anyone here to speak in favor of BZA 4-2020, please step forward. Go ahead and state your name and address, please.
I know there's an error in their publication, but I believe they're not really wanting to increase as much as it sounds like the explanation was. I think they're wanting to increase their overall square footage
Could
to
you-
211.
Could you go ahead and state your name for
Oh,
the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please, and
My
address?
name's Ed Thompson. I'm with A-Plus Signs here in Richmond. I believe they're wanting to, and I think the whole issue is gonna be that it wasn't advertised correct, is that it? But I believe, to understand it, I mean, I believe, they've got existing a lot more than 66 square feet. They're only wanting to increase 211 from what they have existing, which I think that it's only gonna bring their total to just over 300 square feet. If we had dimensions on the drawing, we could probably figure that real quick, but it may not cure anything with the advertisement being incorrect.
Correct, yes.
but I'm in favor of it. I mean, I believe the mall definitely needs the advertising for their tenants. I mean, they've got a big property, you know, they really have a relatively small sign for as much property as there. It's, excuse me, just our ordinance limits that quite a bit.
Thank you.
If anybody's got any questions?
No, thank you,
Thanks.
sir. Anyone else here to speak in favor of BZA 4-2020? Seeing none, is anyone here to speak in opposition of BZA 4-2020?
Mr. Chair,
Sir,
I move that we table BZA 4-2020 so that we can get the proof of publication correct.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Could you call the roll, please?
Jeff Cook,
Aye.
Aaron Roberts,
Aye.
Sabra Salazar.
Aye.
Motion is tabled, and we will hear this, and we will have more public hearing at the next meeting from any publication once it gets corrected. All right? Next order of business is BZA 5-2020, petition of DAK Americas LLC. The petitioner could come forward, please. If you go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Jeremy Troutline, 1561 Northwest 11th. And I'm here on behalf of DAC Americas. Also brought with me Ricky Lane, our Director of Communications, and Dirk Stud, which is our manager of the project, and they'll help speak on the project.
Thank you, sir. And go ahead and state your name so for the record when it gets recorded, please.
Yes, good
Again.
evening. My name is Ricky Lane, and I'm the Director of Public Affairs and Communications for DAC Americas. And tonight, I would like to discuss with you our new operations that we acquired in Richmond in February.
Your address, please.
Oh, my address? My address is 7621 Little Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina,
Thanks, sir.
28270. Again, I'm here tonight to discuss with the board who DAC Americas is. We are new to Richmond. We acquired the previous perpetual recycling solution site in February 1st of last year. So we have been here just a little over a year, and we would like to present to you a project that we have forthcoming, and we would need a variance on several components. So since we are a little bit new, I'd like to give you a little bit of who we are at a glance, so you'll help you understand what this business is and how important this project is. So DAC Americas is part of a business group called Alpec Polyester. We're global leaders in the creation of PET resin and the raw materials that go into PET resin, and then the recycling of PET resin. PET resin is the main plastic that's used in carbonated soft drink and water bottles, packaging, and other industrial uses. At the site in Richmond that we acquired, we have an annual production there of about 100 million pounds a year, where we take waste bottles and we recycle them for use back into the economy. When we acquired this facility, it was under duress and financial distress from the previous owners, and as a result of that, we have been spending the last year in analyzing this business to see what it would take to bring this facility to the world-class standards that our company and our business operates under. We're the largest producer in the Americas and the second largest producer in the world. We have 6 countries that produce PET resin and 15 locations in those countries. We have currently 3 locations that produce recycled material, and those locations are the Richmond site. We also have a facility in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and Pacheco, Argentina. When you look at PET resin and what we would do on a worldwide basis is that we do recycle over 5 billion bottles a year. When you look at these facilities that we have, we didn't become the world-class leaders by operating facilities that were below standard. So our goal is to take this facility and bring it up to world-class standards, and to take this facility and to broaden its product line. Currently, the product that is produced there is, and we can pass this around, is what we refer to as PET flake. That is basically the carbonated soft drink or water bottle that is basically cleaned, sorted, and reduced from contamination, and then it is produced into a flake. Currently, that flake can be used in many applications, but what that flake can't be used in is to go directly back into a bottle. In the world that we're living in, we need to establish a circular economy whereby the products that we produce can go back to back and go in a full circle from what they were to be recycled back to what they were again. So in order for that to happen, we need to install a capacity and increase the technology at this site. And what we will do is we will take that flake and we will install a new process, and basically that process will then turn that flake into what we refer to as PET resin pellet. This pellet isn't just not a reformation of the polymer that you saw that was in the flake, which is about the size of your pinky nail. It is actually, it goes under a chemical processing which allows that polymer to be reblown into a bottle directly. So it does establish a true circular economy whereby we will be able to take product that is produced at the Richmond facility once this project is complete, and it can be blended with virgin material, and it can have an eternal life cycle of coming back into the Richmond area, the greater Indiana area, as well as Ohio and Kentucky. And we have many virgin customers and consumer brand companies that buy these products, create their products, sell those products to consumers. They're used, they are recycled, and they are turned back into these same products again. Without this expansion and without the approval of this variance, we will not be able to put this new technology into this site and bring it up to world-class standards. So I'd like to hand over the presentation to Jeremy, who is the site manager of this facility, and he'll walk you through a little bit more details.
So on the next slide, what we show is the project overview. Oh, I'm sorry. And on the picture on the left, what you see is our 15 square foot acreage that our existing building sits on. So what we would like to do is, on the right-hand picture, take the new structure and place it in the red box on the back side of our plant. So what that will do is allow us to place this structure, which is the building, the 3D picture of the building that you see below, and place it into the green square. So that would be the footprint of the new building. And on the left is the layout of that building, which will also hold 4 silos and an unloading station for bulk truck, which I will let Dirk explain a little bit further into the process.
Yes, good evening. My name is Dirk Stugg. My address is 205 Harbor Drive in Columbia, South Carolina.
Thank you.
29229. This next slide is an overview of what we're planning to do with this new building and the new facilities. And what you see in the upper right-hand corner is a picture of an existing facility that's in the western part of the United States that was recently built. It gives you an idea of what that equipment looks like once it's installed inside the building. Jeremy had also mentioned that we're going to be installing storage silos. The picture in the bottom right-hand side is kind of a representation of the silos that we're planning on installing. In addition to installing the process equipment silos, we're also going to be installing air conditioning equipment, comfort equipment for the plant, other mechanical equipment, including transformers, office space. In addition, we'll be installing what's called a truck loading facility, so we can load the finished product into a truck. Moving on to the next slide, that's a little larger view of what's inside the plant, and you can see we've labeled some of the equipment that's inside this plant. Again, like Ricky had mentioned before, we take the flake product, we send it to an extruder, and we produce the pellets on the end of the extruder. So that's kind of a simplified version of what the process flow is. The next slide is the variance request. As part of this process, the structures that we will be erecting at the site exceed several variances. The flake silo is going to be approximately 100-foot elevation. The building at its highest point is 60 feet. The PET silo is approximately 80 feet, and the loading station is approximately 75 feet. To explain the reason why this is needed is I have superimposed the process equipment that you saw in the picture inside the building. The tall structure at the very end is called an SSP. It's basically the final step in that process, and that basically allows us to produce what's called LNO, or letter of no objection flake, that is compliant with putting it back into a bottle. And to basically fit that equipment inside the plant, we have to have about 60-foot space inside the plant. Similarly, in the loading building, our intent is to be able to drive trucks into this truck loading building, park the truck inside the building, close the doors, and then what we will do is we will load product by our gravity into the truck inside that loading building. So if you look at the truck, and on top of the truck are loading spouts that basically, lower down onto the top of the truck. That allows us to drop by our gravity the finished product into the truck. Once it's fully loaded, we will pull up the loading spouts, and the truck can pull out, and we'll repeat this cycle over again for the next truck. In order for us to fit this structure inside a building for weather protection, we need a height of about 75 feet to put that inside the building. In addition, we're also asking for a variance on the property line setback. Currently, it's about 40 feet with a 75-foot structure. We also have to have a variance for the setback on that structure. Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for petitioner?
Not right now.
I do not have a question.
Not right now, sir. Thank you. We'll go ahead and open public hearing at this time. If there is anyone here to speak in favor of BZA 5-2020, if you'd go ahead and step forward, please. Seeing none, if there's anyone here to speak in opposition of BZA 5-2020, please step forward. Please state your name and address, please, for the record.
Name is Joe Creech, address 1050 Progress Drive. We own the building immediately behind or next door to their facility. Appreciate the recycling effort. I'm all for that. But as a neighbor, it's not really feeling too world-class to us. We talk about the end result we have here, but our problem is the raw material that gets you there. We purchased a building on Progress Drive about 12 months ago, about the time it seems like that they purchased the company. The building we purchased sat vacant for years. The purpose of us buying that building was to grow our business and grow our employee base. We are a remanufacturer of food equipment. So, how our equipment leaves our facility is extremely important in the fact that they're pizza ovens and other related equipment to pizzas. We've invested over $100,000 beyond the building in the last year as making that facility where it fits our needs. We are opposed to any further development or expansion of this operation. And the question is obviously, why are we opposed to that? Well, the infestation from our neighbor for their raw material. So they've already explained to you that they're making their product out of food containers. Well, when food containers are stacked outside, they draw unbelievable infestation, gnats, flies, rats. I could go on and on with what we see. They're so bad from the end of March, early April through November that our employees leave the building to have lunch because we've employed the bug strips, we bought bug lights, we have pest control come on a regular basis from here, and we can't beat it. We can't win. This product that they're storing in the back of their building is raw product which hasn't been cleaned, evidently, because this is where it's attracting all of that. So our neighborhood there, and there are other neighbors here, but we can't even open the doors of our building in the summer because it just overcomes us. Now, we're just a food equipment remanufacturer. Our neighbor across the street is Smith Foods. They're making product we're all consuming. So, obviously that is a big concern. And between the properties, between my property and their property, there's a ditch line that we're for runoff. And that ditch line comes toward 11th Street and then makes a turn, comes around the front of our property. The runoff that we're getting from that area at times of the year, the aroma is awful. Okay, it's green. You know, we've not made any attempt to have it tested. We're not opposed to doing that to see what all's coming through there, but that's coming into our property. So, you know, that's why would we want them to expand and grow and create more of what we already have? I mean, that is just, it's unbearable. Everybody I think spoke here tonight came from another state, so I'm guessing they're probably not there every day, but we live it. We wait for winter just because we get a reprieve from that because of the temperatures. We want everybody in our community to succeed. We want all the businesses to succeed. We're not here to be negative in that way. We all just need to operate in a healthy manner, be responsible, clean up after yourselves, and just be good neighbors. Prior to buying that building a year ago, we operated on New Paris Pike, right next to our city's landfill. And I'm going to tell you, we never had an issue. So I know that our city has the ability to manage that. And if we can manage a landfill where all the waste from our city goes to without that issue, I'm quite sure that there's something that can be done. The other issues go from there to property values and all those things. I'm guilty of not doing due diligence. The property sat empty, and I moved in April, and I was welcomed within a couple weeks of getting there with all the infestation. And that's our story, and that's what we're sticking to it, I guess. But it's just a bad situation. I appreciate their end result, but I think the path to get there has to be different, and that's the reason we oppose it.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Any questions?
No, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else opposing BZA 5-2020, please step forward, state your name and address, please.
My name is Ed Thompson. I own A+ Signs, 920 Progress Drive. We're the property directly south of what used to be Perpetual Recycling, now DAC Americas. To reiterate on what Mr. Creech was speaking of, I mean, the insect problems, I mean, we've been there quite a bit longer than Mr. Creech. Problems started shortly after Perpetual moved in there and started bringing in raw product and stacking it behind the building. We've had to air condition our shop. My employees cannot eat lunch there. You can't sit there, drink a cup of coffee. I mean, we've had 2 city administrations there back to when Sally Hutton was in office. I mean, making light of it. I mean, we invited Sally and her whole administration over one summer for a cookout if they wanted to come, just to see how it worked. The whole time Sally was there visiting, she swatted bugs, didn't know what to do. We've recently had Mr. Snow over. They've seen the problem. Code enforcement's seen the problem. Plastic strewn all over. We get a windstorm, raw product blows all over our properties. Our lawn people in the summer, we pay them extra money to pick up garbage so they can mow out of our yard. Plastic. Like I say, again, the flies and gnats. One, we feel the health issue for our employees eating bugs when they eat their lunch is an issue. Two, I produce signs. We use adhesive vinyls. I have a hell of a time keeping gnats out of my product to produce a good sign. You know, we've air conditioned our building to try to help that. It's helped, it hasn't stopped it. Other issues we see, again, the runoff. Another concern I have more than, and as much as just the smell of the runoff and what's in the ditches. I mean, we've had the sanitation out. Elijah has been there, Gerald's been there, Jeff Low-Miller's been there. They've seen what was in the ditch last summer. Other issue we have, last spring, naturally we had a lot of rain. If they're gonna change and put this much more hard surface in over at that property, where's all that rainwater gonna go? Is it gonna increase more through our ditch lines? We had enough rain last year, we had water 20 feet from our front door because it overran the drainage ditches. With that much more hard surface that's not gonna absorb in the ground, where's that water gonna go? Is there a new drainage plan that they can show us, or new retention areas? Other concerns, again, we've been there, we built our building in 2001. Saw our first 2 rats last year. We have never had an issue like that. You know, I'm all about business and growth, but we need a good neighbor, and we don't have one. And I think you'll hear from other neighbors of the issues we have. Not in favor of approving this variance whatsoever.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions? No, thank you. Anyone else here to oppose BZA 5-2020, please step forward, state your name and address, please.
I'm Dan Stamper, 606 South 19th. I'm president of Thor Construction, Carroll Electric at 1111 Northwest T Street. My south property line is DAC's north property line. And I could sit here and reiterate everything that's been mentioned here about the gnats in your coffee and so forth, which is a ridiculous thing, but it's true. We've been at our location since '03, 17 years. Now, reading from what you people have, I'm sure we're opposed to everything about it. You know, we've been at our location for 17 years. It used to be a nice, clean area, business area, until Perpetual started their operations. After then and to this date, we have experienced mice problems, gnat problems, trash problems, all that they've discussed. I'm basically opposed to the side setback, because we don't want them any closer than they are right now, obviously. And I'm definitely opposed to the increase in the height of 100 feet. I'd like them to go back to the mechanical drawing board and see how they can lower that. That's an awful high building for that particular area. I mean, that's higher than anything that Smith Dairy's got, maybe all the way out to Blue Buffalo. I mean, that's quite high. But in general, they've never been a good neighbor. Now, somebody said that maybe next time they're going to come and before the Board of Zoning Appeal for fencing. As a good neighbor, if I'd have bought that place, I'd have started with the perimeter and pull it in. Be a good neighbor before I'm asking to build more stuff. There has never been an effort by Perpetual, obviously DAC in the last year, to come over and get with the neighbors and secure that property with a fence that's going to catch trash. And yes, I also pay frame lawn care mower to pick up trash before they mow. This should not be burden on, and keep this in mind, everybody around them are Richmondites, through and through business people. Now, if DAC wants to come forward with some new plans and a new game plan on how to be a good business partner in Richmond here, drive around it. Everything looks nice, except for DAC. So table this, if you will, until something a little clearer is done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in opposition of BZA 5-2020? Please step forward, state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Jose Casiano. I am the plant manager at Smith Foods, formerly known as Wayne Dairy. My address is 1590 Northwest 11th Street. I spend a significant amount of time managing my plant. Every day, I walk into my plant and I take a look at what's going around me. I literally pay people to come outside and pick up trash. I am regulated by the FDA. I am governed by a BOA. Every month they come and they visit my plant and they inspect my plant. And I have to talk to the bugs, to the gnats. I too am currently involved in a $9 million expansion for commercial growth. And I too am putting in a lot of effort to ensure that I make great product. And yet, the FDA, they visit my plant every month and they talk. What's next? What are we doing? And I have to tell them that I have to increase the activity to mitigate gnats and bugs. And I too pay people when they mow to pick up trash. What I do in my plant is important to me. It's very important to the Richmond plant, what we're doing right now. What I would ask is have these folks demonstrate what their plans are to mitigate trash. Ask them to show you what are they doing to control infestation. Ask them. I can demonstrate it. I have documentation. Every month, every quarter. I meet with the owners regularly. And when they come and they visit, they're like, wow. What I would suggest is have them demonstrate the plans to mitigate that. It's way, way too important what we're doing across from them to let this lie down. Too important.
Thank you. Anyone else here in opposition of BZA 5-2020, please step forward. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close public hearing at this time. And if I could go ahead and get the staff report, please.
Petition BZA 5-2020, petitioner, the petition of DAC Americas LLC owner, O'Brien and Greer Engineers, Bramble Company agent, request approval of a variance of development standards to reduce side yard setbacks to less than 100% of facade height and to increase the maximum height standard from 40 feet to 100 feet. Location is 1561 Northwest 11th Street. The zoning is industrial commercial, IC. Use of the lot is light manufacturing and assembly. Adjoining zoning, north is IC, south is I-2, east is IC, west is I-2. Notifications, 10 adjacent property owners were notified. We had 10 return, property owners, and then 6 of those were addressed at the same address. And I'll read those now. One was from Stephen Uphouse, Uphouse Insurance Agency at 1810 Williamsburg Pike, Suite 2, Richmond, Indiana, is opposed of the petition. Reason, does not have any concern for flies, which cause problems for every neighbor in our area. I have one from Daniel D. Stamper, 1111 Northwest T Street. He is opposed of the petition, and he sent a letter stating that he is opposed to the petition BZA 5/2020 by DAC Americas LLC for the following reasons. We have been at our location at 1111 Northwest T Street since 2003, 17 years, a nice clean area until Perpetual Plastic started operations. After then, and to this date, we have experienced mice problems and gnat problems along with trash that ends up over our 5 acres, including in front of our building facing Northwest T Street. I am opposed to any reduction in the side yard setback or side yard standards. We do not want this operation any closer than what it is now. I am opposed to increasing the allowable height of the structure. It would be unsightly for the most part. I would like to see their operation come up with an alternative to lower the height. 100 feet is quite tall for this area of town. I would like for all to be tabled until DAC American makes efforts to become a good neighbor business by installing fence designed to help catch debris, do trash detail of the area, parentheses, we pay frames, lawn care, extra for this now. Do some type of control for mice, gnats, and smell either upon arrival or before deliveries. And I have one from Belden Distribution Center, 1411 Northwest 11th Street. They are opposed to the petition. They also sent a letter to members of the city BZA. It says planning. I'm writing you today in opposition to the appeals petition BZA 5/2020 as a property business owner of an adjacent property to this facility. We have seen increasing issues that began when the property was occupied by Perpetual Recycling. The issues we have been forced to deal with increase in insect activities such as gnats, mosquitoes, and flies, plastic scattered onto our property and surrounding area, foul-smelling runoff and sludge and retention drainage ditch that drains under the road and into our lawn. This has increased the volume of water which pools in our lawn, creating a cattail trash-filled swamp. The above all leads to an increase in rodent and varmint activity. These issues have been brought to the attention of Perpetual and the City Sanitation Department. Both have visited and witnessed the flooding of our lawn. Our employees complain about the foul smell, especially our second shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., and have raised concerns about the water runoff and smell. We are a shipping facility with dock doors. The odor permeates inside of our building. This situation has forced our company to pay our lawn service an hourly upcharge fee to pick up trash and debris before they can perform their normal duties. We have been sorely disappointed with the lack of response from the city to this point, allowing the current business at 1561 Northwest 11th Street to continue to contaminate and devalve the surrounding area. We appreciate your concern and action to oppose BZA 5/2020. And I have a response in opposition from A Plus Signs LLC, 920 Progress Drive. He also wrote a letter. Members, I'm writing to you today in opposition to the appeals petition BCA 5/2020. As a property business owner of an adjacent property to this facility, we have seen over the past years the problems incurred with the growth of the facility located at 1561 Northwest 11th Street. Shortly after this property was occupied by Perpetual Recycling, the inventory began to pile up at the rear of this facility. It was soon after that the issues began. The issues we have been forced to deal with are listed below. The increase in insect activity, such as gnats and flies, the smell of garbage similar to the landfill, plastic scattered onto our property and surrounding properties, foul-smelling runoff and sludge, and retention drainage ditches around the property, increased rodent and varmint activity. The issues have all been addressed with and viewed by both the Hutton and Snow administrations of the city, and there has yet to be a resolution. These issues, we feel, can be and have been injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the city, community due to the nature of the issues caused by this facility. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will be and has been adversely affected due to the aforementioned list of issues in this letter. The strict application of this ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of this property because this property has been allowed to operate in a manner that does not meet zoning stipulations set forth by the city's Unified Development Ordinance. This property operates in a manner that does not comply with with the development standards for the IC zoning district. And then he has attached the UDO code that goes with that for IC district. And then the 6 responses I've gotten that are in opposed are also all addressed at 1050 Progress Drive by Corey Dingworth, and there are no comments with these. Brandon Creech, also at 1050 Progress Drive. Joe Creech, 1050 Progress Drive. Trenton Limbers at 1050 Progress Drive. Jeff Burton at 1050 Progress Drive. And Dwayne Fultz at 1050 Progress Drive. Okay, the recommendation, the proposed variance would allow the owner to reduce side yard setback to less than 100% of facade height and increase building height from 40 feet to 100 feet. The variances of the development standards can be approved if practical difficulties exist for the property. A practical difficulty is defined as a practical difficulty is a difficulty with regard to one's ability to improve land stemming from regulations of this Unified Development Ordinance. A practical difficulty is not a hardship, rather it is a situation where the owner could comply with the regulations within this Unified Development Ordinance but would like a variance from the development standards to improve his site in a practical manner. For instance, a person may request a variance from the side yard setback due to a large tree which is blocking the only location that would meet the development standards for a new garage location. The planning staff consulted with all city departments and utilities to determine any objections based on public health and safety. No objections were raised. Staff recommendation is for approval based on these findings. Findings of fact 1, variance of development standards for 1561 Northwest 11th Street. The approval will not be injurious to public health and safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because the use is compatible with the existing and past use at the site. The expansion is consistent with other surrounding industrial properties. B, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because the proposed site developments will not cause adjoining properties any difficulty for access, use, or value. Investment into this property will be a beneficial for surrounding properties. The strict application of terms of the ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because the configuration of the lot makes any expansion difficult to comply with existing zoning requirements. The location and height of the building and towers is necessitated by the location and purpose of manufacturing equipment in relation to the existing structures. the recycling processes used on site can be effectively achieved with the proposed development. There are written commitments is to return to BZA for variance to install a fence around the outdoor storage area on the site.
Any questions for staff?
I have a question for staff. Can we address with the petitioner some of the issues that were brought forth in the oppositions?
Yes, and they would certainly be permitted to conduct a rebuttal since they have the burden of persuasion.
So if you could, one of you or all of you come back up and to the podium. I have some questions.
Okay.
We've heard quite a bit of opposition to not necessarily your proposal, but your business operations in general. What I heard was insect problems, drainage, trash blowing all over the place, health issues for adjoining property owners, green slimy runoff in the ditches, the runoff from the property creating runoff problems that could be exacerbated now with more hard surface, rats, mice. What, if any, are your plans to, let me ask a different question. Have you heard these concerns before?
Yes, we have heard those concerns as we began to working with the Wayne County Economic Development Corporation in acquiring this site. We have heard that information from Mayor Snow, that there were a couple complaints with regards to more of the insects. That was brought forward from the gentleman who spoke with regard to the refabricated or refurbished restaurant equipment that I'm aware of. We have had, first of all, again, I would like to highlight that we acquired this facility in February, and we began to immediately to define how to bring this facility up to a world-class standard. But the one thing that we don't need to do in a very challenging commodity-based business is to put money into a 4-foot fence that in 6 weeks we're going to have to tear down to redefine and regrade the facility to bring it up to a world-class system. So basically that's why we have mentioned to many parties that we'll be coming back for a variance on the fence height, which we will propose to be 10 feet high in a fabric-covered fence on top of a knoll. And basically that fencing will certainly aid in eliminating the crosswinds that come across that property. There is a large open field and property behind us which does pick up velocity and wind. So there is material that is moving in that arena. When we finish this project, we will have that fabric fencing to help control that waste blowing, and those basically are labels or plastic that's come in. When we look at what this material is, this is the material that's coming from each and every person in this room when they go to their recycle bin and put their recycled material in there. So there is no toxicity in there, there's no material in there. These are consumer-based goods that are used and consumed and put in a recycling bin. So as far as the runoff and the regrading of the property, I'll ask Mr. Stugg to make a comment of that because we've already looked into part of that situation.
Yes, members of the board, we've actually submitted a proposal to the city of Richmond, a modification of the stormwater prevention plan, and we've received approval for the modification of the stormwater prevention plan. And that plan includes all the new impervious surface that we're planning on doing as a result of either the modification or other things we're doing at the site. If you look at slide 5, which basically is this one right here, if you look down, yeah, if you can, it's the one that shows the 3D model of the building. If you see right behind that, thank you. If you see right behind that 3D building, what we're currently doing is we're creating additional concrete surface, and that's to basically create additional impervious surface. And the result of, or the reason for that is prior to that, this was a field that was rather muddy. It retained a lot of water and a lot of moisture. So what we're doing is we're creating impervious surface to basically mitigate that standing water and in an effort to help address the bug situation. Secondly, that also allows us to have impervious surface, allows us to better maintain and clean the site. When we do have, have wind. The third thing it does is we're planning on, like Mr. Lane said, we're planning on installing fencing. Currently what we're doing is we're evaluating with our engineering company the prevailing winds and the speed of the winds, and we're trying to determine what the optimum height is for a fence to basically mitigate those winds as they come across these fields from causing these eddies or these currents that basically allow this loose material to basically become airborne. So we're undergoing an engineering study to basically understand that and come back to this board with a proposal on what we propose to do to mitigate the wind factor that causes, the paper and the labels that basically blow around. So we're still working on that, and it's our intent to come back to this board for a second variance with the fence height once we have determined from an engineering basis what is the optimum thing to do to mitigate the crosswinds and the pickup of these labels.
I don't have any other questions.
I have some questions. So will you be bringing in more product than you already are, more raw product?
No, ma'am.
So the amount that you're currently bringing in should not increase by adding this building and this new process to your facility?
This process basically converts the existing product that's being made at the site, and we're basically taking a second step in that process to basically transform it from a flake shape into a pellet shape.
So we're not going to see an increase in raw materials being stored on the property, which would increase the...
There will be a slight increase.
Okay.
So what that slight increase comes from, again, this is a commodity-based business that has very low margins, and recycling is not easy, and that's why everybody doesn't do it. So to make this facility more efficient, we have currently a 24 by 5 operation, so it's 5 days a week. So in that 5 days a week, we have 2 days of shutdown. So as we move all of the current material, there will be transformed from this flake to the pellet. So we will be increasing some operations because we will move to a shift on a Saturday and Sunday, but that will not be a total direct 24 by 7, 365 days a year, because that process requires significant downtime and a regular routine scheduling. So there will be a slight increase by adding that 24 by 7 operation, but then there'll be significant downtime programmed in there. So it is not adding 2 more days worth of product coming out of there, but there will be a slight increase in capacity of that facility.
And this is for the staff. Are we able to see the city reports, the times that they've been out here, what Elijah has said as far as runoff and sewage planning and all that? Are we able to look at that information?
I don't know that we have it right now, but we can
Right.
definitely get that information to the board, yes.
Okay.
As a follow-up, do you know if sanitation ever did any testing on the runoff and see if it was toxic? I'm hearing green slimy from everybody that was in opposition.
I'm not aware of one way or the other.
I can actually comment on that one. There was one point in time where some of the neighbors had complained it was after a hard rain. Our swell right now, or our runoff, has a lot of cattails, a lot of vegetation in it, so it does hold water, okay? It's not sized for some of the improvement on some of the concrete that we put in, so it did hold a lot of water. As that stagnant water, it sits, it does turn green, it does turn murky, just like any water would. So we did plug our culvert. We had a local sewage company come out. They helped clean some of that muck up. Okay, we had the city come out. They did full testing. Everything was approved. And yes, we did go back in, release the plug, and went back to normal. And the city can also, they've got reports on that, I'm sure. They were out at that time.
One more question. As you add that impervious concrete surface for the buildings themselves, your runoff is going to increase. And is there a plan to address the additional runoff from those impervious surfaces so that it's not flooding out the neighbors or creating problems downstream?
That is correct, and like I said, we've applied for stormwater prevention plan, a modification thereof, that's already been approved. And that modification accommodates all the additional impervious surface. We're in the process, or we will very shortly, increase the detention space of the current existing detention pond or area to increase that size as a result of the impervious surface that currently exists and will exist in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Chair,
Sir.
I'd like to make a motion to table this agenda item until they have a fully developed plan with a lot of the issues addressed that we can see. They said they've got a stormwater plan, they've got some other plans for fencing, et cetera. I think it would help me move this one way or the other if I seen a more complete plan than what we have tonight. If I have to vote tonight, I don't think it's going to be in favor of that. Just throwing that out there. But I would like to make a motion for tabling it till we have more information. And that would include the sanitary reports, please.
I'll second that. I'd like to get some more information from some other folks in the city.
We have a motion and a second. If you could call roll, please.
Jeff Cook,
Aye.
Aaron Roberts,
Aye.
Saber Salazar.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Table.
It is tabled till further information and further plan from the petitioner has been proposed. All right, next we have BZA 6-2020, petition of D. Schmidt Construction, LLC. If I can get the petitioner, thank you. And if you state your name and your address, please, sir.
Yes, my name is Dan Schmidt. I live at 4748 State Route 122 West in Eaton, Ohio, 45320. Also own Catron's Glass here in Richmond, which is the address 1227 South 9th Street, Richmond, Indiana. Property is owned by D. Schmidt Construction, LLC. Catron's Glass has been in the Richmond community since 1982. Been at the same location that we are at, 1227 South 9th Street, since the late 80s. And we have seen growth over the years. My wife and I purchased Catron's Glass in 2003. And as we've seen that growth and development in our business, there's been a need to expand. And with the way our current property is zoned, the front half of the property, as you'll see here in the next slide, is zoned commercial. The rear half of the property is zoned residential. The current structure sitting in the back with the white roof there that you see, that is our fab shop. That was built in 1991. We need to expand, and with the flow of the business, the only true place to go is where we have that proposed expansion, which is zoned residential, which is the need for the variance. So our plan would be to tie onto that existing structure. That way we don't interfere with our parking lot up front for our retail customers. And then to also tie in that front building to the back building with that little section where the property splits. So that is the reason for the variance.
Okay. Any questions for the petitioner?
No, sir.
If not, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We will open public hearing at this time. If anyone is here in favor of BZA 6-2020, please step forward. Seeing none, anyone here in opposition of BZA 6-2020, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close public hearing, and if I could get the staff report, please.
Thank you. BZA 6/2020, petitioner, the petitioner of Schmidt D Construction LLC owner, Daniel K. Schmidt, agent, request approval of variance of use to increase square footage of an existing commercial structure in an R3 district. The location is at 1227 South 9th Street. The zoning is general commercial and high-density single-family residential and R3 district. Use of the lot is commercial retail storage. Adjoining zoning, north is GC and R3, south is GC and R3, east is R3, and west is GC. There were 10 adjacent property owners notified and 2 responses were received. I have one in favor from Christina McGinty at 4937 Studi Road, Centerville, Indiana 47330. And I have one in favor from Juanita Rogers at 1207 South M Street. The recommendation, the proposed variances would allow a new addition in the R3 district at a corridor connecting 2 existing structures, making all building structures connected and house everything under one roof. Variances of use must meet the following definition of hardship. A difficulty with regard to one's ability to improve land stemming from the development standards of this Unified Development Ordinance, which may or may not be subject to relief by means of a variance. In and of themselves, self-imposed situations and claims based on a perceived reduction of or restriction on economic gain shall not be considered hardships. Self-imposed situations include the purchase of land with actual or constructive knowledge that for reasons other than physical characteristics of the property, the development standards herein will inhibit the desired improvement. Any improvement initiated in violation of the standards of this Unified Development Ordinance, any result of land division requiring variance from the development standards of this Unified Development Ordinance in order to render that site buildable. The planning staff consulted with all city departments and utilities to determine any objections based on public health and safety. No objections were raised. The staff recommendation is for approval based on these findings. Fact of finding, variance of use for 1227 South 9th Street. 1, the approval of the variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because the proposal would not change the nature of the business as it is currently operating a commercial business on an existing split zone parcel. The variances would not pose a risk to public health, safety, and morals, or general welfare. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the properties included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because increasing the square footage of this commercial structure would not affect the adjacent properties in a substantially adverse manner because it would allow for increased storage space, which is currently being used around the perimeter of the property, and UDO required setback standards would be in compliance in this proposal. North of this parcel is a village pantry. South of this parcel is a gas station, both of which have a higher volume of customers. Approving this proposal does not have any adverse change in business operations. 3, the need for the variance of use does arise from some condition particular to the property involved. Unlike other commercial properties along US 27 South, this property is split zoned as part commercial and part residential, which is unique to the property, prohibiting any future expansion on the site. The strict application of terms of the ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought because the only parking available to customers is in the front half of the property next to the existing commercial structure in the GC zoning district, limiting any expansion in this area. The existing commercial building in the rear half of the property is in the R3 zoning district, limiting commercial expansion. This existing structure is not residential in character or use. Given the existing split zone on this on this parcel, there is no other suitable locations in which an accessory structure can be installed. 5, the approval does not interfere substantially with the Richmond Comprehensive Plan because the Richmond Comprehensive Plan designates this strip of US 27 South as commercial in the future land use map, and the expansion of the current use here is consistent with that designation. No written commitments were made.
Any questions for the planning staff?
None.
I'd like to move that we approve BZA 6-2020 based on the finding of fact.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve BZA 6-2020. If I get the roll call, please.
Jeff Cook,
Aye.
Aaron Roberts,
Aye.
Saywood Salazar.
Aye.
Has been approved for the petition. Thank you very much. Next is BZA 7-2020, which has been tabled for this evening. Following order of business is now BZA 8-2020, petition of Juanita Ford and John Gadosh. If I could have the agent forward and state your name and address, sir.
My name is George Sowers. I'm an attorney, and my office is at 111 South 7th Street, Richmond, Indiana. The petition is for the 3 owners, but it's based upon 3 offers to purchase, which have been signed by Jalta Holdings, LLC, which name appears on the petition. Jalta Holdings was just recently organized by Mr. James Mayer, who is with me right here. James Mayer is interested in purchasing these properties, and he has purchase agreements subject to getting zoning approval tonight for this variance. These properties are located on East Main. Their addresses are 325, 329, and I'm not 3025, 3029, and 3031. They are the 3 residential properties that lie between the Riley Auto Parts Center and the dental office that is next to the entry to Southeast Parkway. They are residential properties. The 3025 is owned and lived in by Juanita Ford. 3029 is an investment property that is rented, and 3031 is owned by Woodleaf and Samuels LLC, which formerly housed a hair salon, but which has been vacant recently. The property at 3025 had been listed in October of 2013 and ran through June of 15 and did not sell. 3029, as I said, is the rental. And then 3031 was listed in April of last year and had not sold until the purchase agreement was signed just recently by Jalta. It was a hair salon, but it is now vacant. The reason for this petition is Mr. Mayor would like to purchase these properties so that he could move the Taco Bell that is currently at 3302 East Main. Has a need to move the Taco Bell because the lease is expiring. And as you all may know, fast food franchisors require buildings to be remodeled and rebuilt periodically. And Mr. Mayor is due to remodel or rebuild the Taco Bell. And the building that's there is not really susceptible to renovation. So with the expiring lease and the need to rebuild, Mr. Mayor has entered into purchase agreements for these 3 lots, and it would be to erect a new Taco Bell with a drive-up window. This variance is requested because it's zoned neighborhood commercial. Neighborhood commercial permits such things as a delicatessen or coffee shop or small retail. It does not permit a restaurant with a drive-up. Even though I'm old enough to recall that where Riley Auto Parts is used to be Frisch's, where you could drive in and park. Car hups would come out and take your order, then bring your food out and hang it on your car door. So this area is not entirely foreign to a drive-up restaurant. So the need arises from the expiring lease and from the need to rebuild. We have attached some exhibits to the petition. The proposal would meet all of the developmental standards for neighborhood commercial, but we do need a variance for the use because it doesn't permit a restaurant with a drive-up. You will see that the plan is to raise, these lots slope somewhat to the south toward a couple residences. The plan is to raise the elevation of the lot so that they're level and street level, and there will be a retaining wall. There is a small retaining wall for part of that area now, but it would needs to be replaced with a much more substantial retaining wall. At its highest point, it's 11 feet, and this creates a buffer and also raises the elevation so that any concern about noise would likely not drift toward those residences. Additionally, plan staff has requested a commitment for a 6-foot fence. Petitioner is happy to do that. He thinks that would be a good idea. So the proposal is to create the new Taco Bell as shown in the drawings attached to the petition, comply with all developmental standards for neighborhood commercial, provide a new retaining wall, raising the elevation with a fence to try to address any concerns that the neighbors might have. I believe that's all the things I need to tell you. Mr. Mayor is here, and one of the other reasons for relocating the restaurant in this area is it's desirable to locate it near its present location so that people know where to find it, and it clearly would be visible from the old location. And so in addition to that, it's necessary, or it's not necessary, but it's highly desirable to move in this general area. And I would point out that most of the area along East Main, starting in the 2900 block, is general commercial, and it's just these few houses on the south side, 3 of which we're addressing, that are neighborhood commercial. And other than these 3 residences, I think there's maybe only one other residence that's occupied as a residence all the way to Ohio from this point. So we see this becoming commercial. We don't see the owners being able to sell these properties if it's not commercial, because in fact the 3031 has been listed since April of last year, and 3025, which is owner occupied, was listed for over 15 months from 13 to 15. It didn't sell. So clearly these are areas that are going to be commercial. It's just that neighborhood commercial doesn't fit our use, so we need a variance of use. And I'd be happy to answer any question, be happy to have Mr. Mayor address any concerns that you might have. I would ask for an opportunity to speak in response to any comments that might be in opposition.
Sir, any questions?
I would like to make a comment. I'm old enough to remember Frisch's.
Pardon?
I'm old enough to remember Frisch's.
Good. It was good. I always enjoyed it.
I don't have any other questions or comments.
There was Carter's Restaurant too.
Yeah.
I have no question.
That was across the street.
Across the
G-Day's
street.
Rental was.
You made
Yeah.
the circle from
Yeah.
one to the other.
Okay. If no questions, then we will move to public hearing then.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here to speak in favor of BZA 8-2020? Please step forward. State your name and address, please.
My name is Mark Brunton Jr. I'm at 900 Northeast Street, Depot. Been a real estate broker for almost 23 years in this community. Clearly, all of those properties that sit on the south side of that road have been transitioning to commercial slowly for a long time. The challenge a lot of them get into is what they can be used for now. Clearly, the demand for those as residential structures is probably not there like it used to be. So I'm here to ask you to support and to offer some additional opportunities for some of these businesses to stay in our market and also have some space that they can grow into.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in favor of BZA 8-2020, please step forward. Seeing no one else, is anyone here to speak in opposition of BZA 8-2020, please step forward. State your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name's Alex Painter. This is my family. Thank you. We reside at 3112 Southeast Parkway. Excuse me. This is our first zoning board hearing. As you might guess, so as I mentioned, my name's Alex Painter. This is my wife Alicia. These are our children Grayson, Eleanor, and Harper. And thank you for taking some time tonight to hear our grave concerns with this proposed development. We weren't here when there was a Frisch's, but we do live very close to this proposed development. And although my voice and our voices will be calm, we are frustrated with this recent news. And we have experienced incalculable anxiety over the past couple weeks as we wrestle what this could mean for our family, as well as our possible tenure in the city of Richmond. So, as you can see, I didn't go to art school, but I do know my primary and secondary colors. So the yellow is the 3 properties that are in question, and that is the property line. The blue is ours, and then the green is essentially a fence line that we do share with these 3 properties. So as you can see, north-south, we share the majority of the property line. East-west, we share the majority of the property line. We bought our home, other way, 3112 Southeast Parkway 3 years ago this month, and we love our home. And as you can see from the pictures, we love the fact that our children can play here. So these are pictures that we've taken from our property as well as inside, as you can see. But we love how conveniently close we were to US 40, and the fact that we were insulated by these 3 properties. And again, properties that are in favor to be leveled in favor of the proposed Taco Bell. What is incredibly obvious through viewing these pictures that we have taken again is that this would be very intrusive to our home and other residential properties in Ravenna Park. And as we're all keenly aware, this area has been designated an NC zone, and that is for a very good reason. And in looking through the pictures, you can see that is wildly appropriate. So keep in mind that we did buy this house knowing that we did have a dentist office and a hair salon as neighbors, both of which comfortably fall in to the designation of the NC zoning. So our issues with this variance are great in number. So I'd like to start with what we do know. A vast increase in noise, as this will be a location that serves customers 19, possibly 20 hours a day, if it retains the same hours that the one that is currently down the street, and I assume the hours would be the same. So 19 or 20. I just want that to soak in. I know that once upon a time there was a restaurant on the corner there, but I highly doubt that the Frisch's Drive-Up was open 20 hours a day. So naturally with this restaurant, particularly in the limited service or fast food industry, we could fully expect probably an increase in trash, rodents, and a decrease in overall cleanliness. And nationwide statistics show a spike in crime around fast food restaurants. And we feel that the placement of this Taco Bell jeopardizes and compromises the safety of not just our home, but the entire Ravenna Park neighborhood. And a cursory glance at the crime in the area adjacent GC zone in the 3600 block of East Main Street reports nearly 300 incidents of crime or activity just since November 1st, 2019. In the second map here, this is the proposed area for the Taco Bell. As you can see, it looks very familiar. You see the O'Reilly Auto Parts. There are only 44 instances during that same time. Now, most logic probably tells you that that crime is going to get pulled further down the street, closer to homes, closer to our house, closer to our neighbor's house. So I think that, again, this development and zone variance would be injurious to the safety of this area. And I mentioned invasiveness before, and it would seem that the privacy of our home would cease to exist. You saw how close that this development was to the to our home, and if everything were to be leveled out, that is a slope. That slopes all the way down to Southeast Parkway. If you were to level out that lot, even if you put a fence in, people would be looking down into our property. I will appeal to you all very personally here in a moment, but please understand that that puts us in a very perilous position as homeowners. And after speaking with numerous local realtors, they have made it clear that this would adversely affect the value of my family's property and other properties. And while a Starbucks, a Chick-fil-A, or a Whole Foods may actually help your property's value, nationwide studies again show that if it's a McDonald's, Burger King, or Taco Bell that moves in next door, your property could be harmed upwards to 20%. And that's not a number I'm pulling out of the air. I will cite the precedent here in a moment. But in addition to this, and again, this is from the realtors from our community who don't necessarily have a stake in this transaction, this would almost certainly mean a decrease in the amount of people who would be interested in buying the property. So the pool is smaller and the price goes down. This directly refutes the findings of fact listed in the variance documents that state that, quote, further commercial development in this immediate area is likely to only increase surrounding property values. I think in just speaking with the aforementioned various community members, it would seem that this is a very important pillar in this variance, that this will help property values. And I have not heard anything. I have not heard a word that would inform that or reinforce that. And speaking of the findings of fact, I would also like to mention how this variance proposal does not adhere to the 5 statements. The first being that this proposal will, quote, not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of this community. So as previously stated, the welfare, health, and happiness of my family and others in Ravina Park neighborhood, in our opinion, and others, would be extremely compromised by this. Due to lack of privacy, increased 19 or 20-hour-a-day traffic, exposure to increased light, sound, increased trash, rodents, smells. In fact, after we petitioned, we did our own petition. We've had to, as homeowners, we aren't experts in any of this, but we did hit the ground and talk to all of our neighbors that we could get face-to-face with, and they were all, to a person, adamantly opposed to this variance for the issues that we stated above. And again, which we'd like to think, and seems apparent, would impact the overall welfare of the community. The increased traffic is also an issue. So, as you probably are all aware, this is not an ideal setup, oftentimes, for traffic and the flow of traffic. And I'm sorry, let me find a spot here. So this loop is already fairly frequently used as a cut-through for traffic, would only see a dramatic increase. I highlighted this because, as you know, there is a traffic light by Palm Beach Tan. That creates a natural bottleneck. People constantly turn right and use Southeast Parkway and then up to Henley as a cut-through. It's only natural that if you look further down the street that isn't close to the stoplight, by the Jimmy John's, by the Walmart Plaza, you are not allowed to turn left. I would imagine that this would probably, I'm not in DOT, I don't control the street and the flow of traffic, but I imagine that a left turn would also be prohibited out here because you'd be turning directly into a light, a stoplight traffic. So if you prohibit the left turn, then everyone's going to turn right. Everybody's going to speed down, because again, I think the one thing I brought up earlier is that this area is on a natural decline, so people just speed through Southeast Parkway. I can only imagine that's going to increase traffic. And in terms of precedent, a case very similar to this one came up before the Oak Park, Illinois Zoning Board in July of 2017. I know, different city, different state, however, exact same. NC zone, adjacent to multiple residential properties that they wanted to put in a restaurant with a drive-up. The zoning board agreed that the proposal for a drive-through did not meet the standard of the zoning code that requires the company to prove their proposal will not have a, quote, substantially undue adverse effect on neighboring property. This is a very public case, and it is found very easily on the internet, and this is exactly where I pulled the 20%. That is what their board found. But I know, this is not the same case, but as you will see, this is one that shares many of the similar characteristics of the one we are talking about right now. So finally, I'd like to appeal one last time to the board. I understand that we don't know the letter of the law near as well as anyone in this room probably, but we can't use the minutia to our advantage as some who are much more familiar with all of this could. But we hope that through our presence here, we are way past our bedtime right now, that you could at least see that what all this could mean. We hope that you've been at least able to ascertain the clear-cut collateral damage that this move could inflict. And on a personal note, while neither of us are from Richmond, we both graduated from Earlham College, and we chose to stay here and raise our family. My wife oversees the largest Boys and Girls Club in town, where hundreds of children are provided with after-school care every single day. I work in the Earlham College admission office, where I sell the merit of not just the college, but the city of Richmond to students from around the state, region, country, and world. We believe in this community. Jeff Kappa was here earlier. I was able to get him on the phone in less than 40 minutes. That's impressive, and he was here to support us. Unfortunately, he did have to leave, but I hope you did note his presence. And we believe that in this community, in the hope that the right decision will be made to maintain the solitude, privacy, safety, and decreased traffic for the Ravina Park neighborhood. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Nope.
We do have questions, but I don't know if that comes after how this works. Sorry.
We won't take questions from the public. You can state either you're in favor of or you're opposed to and the reasons why. But as far as questions go, we don't take questions from the public.
If they do pose questions and Mr. Sowers would want to rebut and make that part of his rebuttal, that would be his option. But he is correct, the board does not have to answer questions, but you can present the questions, you just don't have to answer them.
If you want to go ahead and state the questions that you have, we can note them, and like she said, if Mr. Sowers would like to come back up and rebut those, that's up to him.
Okay, my name is Alicia Painter. I live at 3112 Southeast Parkway, which is an adjacent home to this. And I just want to appreciate Matt and Maria's time because they have been wonderful throughout all of this. We have a lot of questions. So one of our main concerns, as mentioned, was how to control drainage and stormwater. Also, in terms of the fence, which Mr. Sowers brought up, would that go all along our property? If so, we would strongly demand, for lack of a better word, a vinyl fence and not a wood fence. We're interested on what kind of easement rights would exist on our property. And how Taco Bell in general would handle any residential property damage that may happen with our property literally being right next to it and the 19 hours a day and high intensity. A couple other things. It is listed in the findings of fact that this would only help increase surrounding property values, and as a resident who, buys a home to live in, but also for property value and resale value, I would love to be enlightened on how this is the case for any of the residential homes that are backed up against it. Referring to the Richmond Comprehensive Plan, how will this variance maintain or increase green space? Given that there are 3 homes there, I'm interested to see how that would happen. And what is the overall goal for the city of Richmond? Is it to increase more NC zones to allow for more GC properties? And more specifically, is it the goal of Richmond to do that when it backs up against a neighborhood, specifically in this case, the Ravina Park neighborhood? How will this variance improve our community? What makes this variance of use so unique that it's worth changing this zone? As the city of Richmond, are we creating a pattern to allow more properties on East Main Street to become restaurants or other high-intensity places? And if not, why are we allowing for this? And if so, where do we draw the line? Almost all the lots from Southeast Parkway all the way to 34th Street are located behind residential homes in the Ravina Park neighborhood. As my husband mentioned, my son and I went and petitioned on every single one of those doors, letting them know, yes, this is the issue that we're addressing right now, but this very well could be your issue that you're addressing if you live behind that State Farm or the mortgage or whatever else is on East Main Street currently. There are currently numerous NC businesses, like I just listed off, that are doing okay or doing fine and are not for sale. So why do we feel the need to change these NC zonings to allow for a drive-through Taco Bell? Also, our data through my neighborhood update, which was shown on those maps, shows that there is an increase of activity and incidents in the GC zoned areas. We believe it is important to strategically place these businesses throughout Richmond to help prohibit elevated levels of crime and also maintain proper flow of traffic. Is it in the best interest of our city to allow for more GC businesses to replace our NC zoned businesses in a condensed area of East Main Street? What is proposed to help maintain the values of residential homes that would be affected from the construction of a Taco Bell? A couple notes that I took while Mr. Sowers was talking. Is it an option to extend the lease and rebuild where they currently are? Is that an option? Because it would really help us out, and it would really help all of our neighbors out in this neighborhood. He also mentioned the retaining wall and how that would create a buffer. I'm really interested to see how that works. I don't think a retaining wall creates any kind of buffer. I think it just helps keep your land in, retain that. Mr. Sowers also mentioned that it complies with all the standards, except for probably one of the most important ones in my opinion, which is the variance of use. You know, increasing the traffic, increasing the crime by allowing a 19-hour-a-day restaurant. Right there. I think it's also important to point out how Mr. Sowers said one of these 3 properties has someone living in it. One of these 3 properties is currently rented out. That leaves the 3rd one, which it was on the market. It is currently not on the market. I think that's an important point here. Yes, they have been listed in the past, but I'm pretty sure that we'd be down the same road too of not finding a current buyer due to the limited clientele as many local real estate agents have encouraged us to add tonight. Also, and this is just a side note, if Mr. Brunton is, I don't know if he is or isn't, but does he serve as a real estate agent in part of this? Is he serving to help with Taco Bell or these 3 properties? And if so, I think that's important to keep in mind as the only person who spoke in favor of this happening. Any questions?
Okay. Any questions? No. Thank you very much. Anyone else here to speak in opposition of BZA 8-2020? Go ahead and step forward. Yes, sir. If you would state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name is William F. Denny. I live at 3100 Southeast Parkway since 1965. I have some questions. I'd like to know, I'll list them here and then maybe I can get some answers from the other people. I'd like to describe the business hours. What are going to be the business hours? Second, will utilities be able to have access from Main Street? That's utility companies. At present, they can come in through the existing residential properties for Richmond Power and Light and telephone company. When will the sanitary department have pickups there for the trash and pickup? Fourth, what kind of parking lot lights are proposed? 5, will snow be totally removed or left in place? 6, what are the methods for rainwater runoff? My property will be a lot lower than what theirs are. And 7, could a retaining wall be made of reinforced steel and concrete instead of concrete block? Concrete block is not very suitable for very high heights. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak in opposition of BZA 8-2020? Seeing no one else, we'll go ahead and close public hearing. Do we want to go ahead and ask the petitioner to come up and have his rebuttal? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Roberts. I've tried to present the factual basis for this variance, and I know there are always concerns when there are variants, but often they're not well documented. Traffic, for one of the reasons, one of the idiosyncrasies of these lots is they're zoned neighborhood commercial, but there's no street parking and there's not enough area for off-street parking. So by combining these three lots, it does provide for parking, and it will provide for entry and exit onto Main Street from that lot. And I don't think it's reasonable to expect people that are planning to go to Taco Bell, who are probably going to the one in the 3300 block now, would detour down onto Southeast Parkway. So I don't see traffic being an issue. As far as values, the values also involve the current properties that we're talking about, 3029, 3031, and 3025, and two of them have been listed and not sold until this time with these purchase agreements. The other property, which is occupied, is an investment property, and so if they aren't sold now, their value is not as great. This increases their value, so it's always a balancing act of what's good in general. There is no request for an easement. We have submitted copies of the development plan, and whenever there is a building permit and there's any landscaping or impervious lot put down, there must be provision to prevent runoff of water any more rapid than it currently does, and there will be a provision for detention of surface water. As far as I understand the concerns of the residents behind, but I believe that raising the elevation of the lot and creating this wall will greatly reduce the noise that they're even hearing now. And I base that on a very practical experience that I had years ago when I lived for 3 months in Pittsburgh. And I lived in a residence that was located just above the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And I didn't hear the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and what I think I learned as a practical matter is that the difference in elevation actually kills or buffers that sound. So by raising this retaining wall, we're actually creating a buffer. As far as the fencing, I just turned to Mr. Mayor, and he is perfectly willing to put a fence up that extends past all of the joint property line with the neighbors. I think his intention is to put up a wood fence if they desire something else. We think it should be solid. We think that will help buffer sound further. It certainly will contain any trash. As far as the frequency of the pickup, I don't know the answer to that, but perhaps Mr. Mayor could answer that. Mr. Mayor is wanting to purchase this to relocate Taco Bell. He's part of Mayor Management, and they have other Taco Bells and KFCs, and I think they have a reputation for maintaining them cleanly and in good condition. As far as the statistics for crime, beginning in the 3600 block, which is much greater, obviously that didn't include the Taco Bell, which is in the 3300 block, so I don't think the Taco Bell is causing a crime rate. I would also want to know what those crimes referred to are, whether they are speeding or illegal parking or what they are, so it's hard for me to deal with that, except I do know that the increased crime that was mentioned was 3600 block and east, and the current Taco Bell is at 3300 block, so I don't think the Taco Bell is causing the problem. One of the things they seem to be concerned about the hours of operation and the noise. Again, I believe the retention wall and its height and the fence will help. I also talked to Mr. Mayor about the speaker system for drive-up. He tells me that today the speakers are much better, the fidelity's better, so they're not as loud, and so you really don't hear them. Lights were mentioned. We submitted the lighting plan with this petition, and it shows that today it's very easy to control the direction of lighting, and it shows the lighting pattern, and it shows practically no overflow onto the adjoining properties. And Mr. Mayor would do everything he can to prevent that from happening. If he would like to address the frequency of the pickup for trash, I can ask him to do that. I do not know what those facts are. And if there are any other questions this panel has, I'd be happy to address them.
Go ahead and state your name and address, please, for the record.
James Nair, 2984 State Line Road, South. Frequency of trash, it's completely dependent on the waste company. Right now, it's twice a week that they come. Hours that they come fluctuates based on their schedule. So it's really hard to say, yes, it's going to be this time, because in 6 months it could be different. But they usually come in the morning. We usually see them 8 o'clock in the morning, come pick up trash. I feel that we try our best to be neighborly when we take care of our properties. We have a mantra in my organization: not only do we take care of our property, but we try to take care of within eyesight of our property. We have what we call maintenance people that come in and clean the parking lot every morning at the restaurants to make sure, aesthetically it looks nice. There was a comment on rodents and whatnot. We have pest control, nationally mandated pest control, come out once a month. We have had a clean record since my existence with insects and rodents. We really try to keep clean environments. In light, I understand that, some folks are close by. I get that. But there are lots of situations like this in Richmond. For example, the McDonald's in town, the Lee's Famous Recipe in town, the Wendy's are all surrounded by residential homes at this point. Actually, one of my restaurants on the west side of town, KFC Taco Bell, it's adjacent to residential homes. So it's very typical, and we try our best to be good neighbors and take care of the properties. Did that answer those questions for you?
It did. Would you be opposed in the written commitments to commit to a solid vinyl fence versus a solid wood fence?
I guess I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd like to see what the engineer would present for that. Just with my layman's knowledge, it seems fine. I don't know if that helps for one reason or another.
That was just something that one of the
Correct.
opposition folks...
I know that they requested that. I don't know what the benefit of that opposed to a wood fence is. We might find that a wood fence would be better for soundproofing or whatever, or keeping, But, yeah, absolutely, we would welcome that for sure.
Do you have an illustration of what the new Taco Bell will look like? I know that a lot of restaurants are trying to look less commercial and a little bit nicer. Because I guess, my concern as a citizen of the city is we continue to build up. There's plenty of empty spaces in town to put a Taco Bell, right? So my question, I guess, is how do we get this to fit into the landscape that's already there, maybe, and so it's not looking like a commercial build-up with a really tall sign?
Yeah.
Like, the Wendy's looks really nice. Is it gonna look like that, or
Well,
is it
it looks
gonna
like a Wendy's, traditionally what we have seen, and it's a fluid motion in terms of what restaurants look like. There's design teams with each brand, and somebody comes up with a new idea every year, and it's usually one brand, and what you see is all the brands sort of follow
Right.
suit, and everybody starts to look the same.
Yeah.
And we have one plan, but depending on when we start construction, it might change. But aesthetically, we want to look nice. You know, right now, the restaurant Chester Boulevard is a similar look to what it might be.
Okay.
And in terms of finding other properties, we've struggled to find properties on the east side of town, truthfully. We have tried to negotiate with the current landlord, and I don't think we're part of his overall business plan going forward.
Interesting.
And we want to stay in that area, because that is sort of the main business center of Richmond. And we get statistics on all restaurants, all brands do. And we can see sales difference and sales numbers based on proximity to center of town, compared to outside of town. So we can see a substantial difference from where we are now in this area of town compared to, let's say, the interstate, the far east side of Richmond. And it's amazing. And the traffic counts changed substantially from Garwood Road on. And that's a big factor. You know, we're looking to invest quite a bit of money, and, you know, to do so, we gotta make sure it's the right place that will be successful. And we've seen restaurants close down where there might be properties available on that side of town, on the far east side of town, and it's, you know, they just don't have the traffic counts that they need.
Two items that had been mentioned prior to. One was local utilities access. I guess that was a question. I don't know how it's set up there now as far as that goes, but that was brought up by the gentleman.
I guess I'm not sure what the question is. Will we be able to access the local utilities?
I guess
Yes.
he's asking, I believe his question was local utilities being able to access the properties behind you and your property, and how that's gonna work.
Yes, they will be accessible. They won't be, obviously, if the utility company needs to come on the property and do some work, they have the right to do so.
I think they said, were the utilities accessible from Main Street? I think that was the question from Mr. Denny.
Yes.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, thank you.
Because there'll be a
There-
retaining wall now, so you won't be able to drive through those other properties to get to the back of those lower properties? Is that the question?
I believe.
No, you can access the other properties on Southeast Parkway.
I think the question is, where will your utilities come from? From Main Street or?
I think some of them come from Main Street, and some of them are in the back. Some of them are next to where the old Arby's was, the O'Reilly's. So, yeah, and depending on what the utility is, they have different directions that flows.
And that's probably more of a question for contractor and architect as
Correct.
opposed to.
Correct, yeah.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
If I could make one comment on what Mr. Mayor said, is he explained to me, and it was surprising to me, that for Taco Bell and similar restaurants, the closer you are to the center of town, the better the traffic is. And he did mention that he had seen marketing surveys and there was a difference. And it's rather dramatic from closer to the center of town versus the interstate. The interstate may be good for hotels and certain other businesses, but we know we've seen restaurants close out at the interstate. So moving farther east is not very desirable. Plus, he's looked for places, and there weren't places available. So the location is important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If we could go ahead and have the staff report, please.
Thank you. Petition of BZA 8-2020, petitioner, the petition of Juanita Ford, John C. Gadosh, Woodleaf and Samuels LLC, owner, George M. Sowers, agent. Request approval variance of use to allow a restaurant with a drive-up window in the NC district. Location is 3025 East Main Street, 3029 East Main Street, and 3031 East Main Street. The zoning is NC neighborhood commercial. Use of the lot is commercial and single-family detached dwelling. Adjoining zoning, north is GC, south is R2, east is NC, and R2, west is GC. There were 11 adjacent property owners notified, and we received 6 responses. We also received 11 non-adjacent that all live in the Ravina Park neighborhood, which I won't read those, but I'll read the 6 responses that we received. I've got Studebaker Buick, Scott Studebaker, 3030 East Main Street, is in favor of the petition. Vishal Kumar Patel at 3020 East Main Street is in favor of the petition. Robert Williams, 3041 East Main Street, in favor of the petition. Danny Smith at 3012 Southeast Parkway, opposed to the petition. And he wrote a comment, we experienced cockroaches and rats when Arby's was behind our residence. We are very opposed to this happening. William F. Denny at 3100 Southeast Parkway is opposed to the petition. And he's got questions on the back. I believe he's the one who stated those earlier. 1, describe business hours. 2, will utilities be able to have access from Main Street? 3, when will sanitary department have pickup? 4, what kind of parking lot lights? 5, will snow be totally removed? 6, what are the methods for rainwater runoff? 7, could retaining wall be made of reinforced steel and concrete instead of concrete block? And then I have the petition or the response from Alex and Alicia Painter at 3112 Southeast Parkway. They are opposed of the petition, and they have a letter that's attached. Opposition comments. 1, due to the increase of traffic, light, air, and sound pollution, lack of privacy, jeopardized safety, and assumed increase of crime for the Ravina Park neighborhood, my family and I are extremely opposed to the variance of use proposed for the 3025, 3029, and 3031 properties on East Main Street. As a former camp director with the Boys and Girls Club of Wayne County, I believe in the need for outside play for children. The proposed Taco Bell will limit that outdoor time my family spends due to increased traffic and lack of safety, with Taco Bell being adjacent to our backyard play area, as well as our driveway area. My family and I moved into our home in 2017 with neighbors being residential homes, a hair salon, and a dentist. The hours of these 2 operations never went past 7 p.m., were low intensity, had shortened or no hours on Saturdays, and were both closed on Sundays. As working people, we had no issue with being neighbors to a hair salon or dentist, with never feeling the safety of our family was being jeopardized. The proposed Taco Bell currently operates from 7 a.m. until 2 a.m., if not 3 a.m. This proposes an immense negative change to my family with around-the-clock traffic, constant noise, lack of privacy, making the home no longer suitable for our family that has 3 young children. The proposal for the 3025, 3029, and 3031 properties would grade out the land. As an adjacent homeowner, we are very fearful of the plans for stormwater and draining, as our property will be lower than the proposed Taco Bell, and are fearful for what that can mean to the foundation and potential water damage to our home and yard. The welfare of wildlife is also jeopardized as the 3025 and 3029 properties are adjacent to a small lot on Southeast Parkway that is currently a suitable habitat that consists of no home in the area but simply trees and brush. As a family, we petitioned and spoke with as many residents on Southeast Parkway and Avon Lane. Every single person we spoke with was adamantly opposed to this variance of use due to increased traffic noise and jeopardizing the solitude of the Ravina Park neighborhood. We oppose this variance also because of the increased car traffic on Southeast Parkway, which is already used as a cut-through. Having a Taco Bell one lot away from Southeast Parkway will only increase the traffic that exists on this street, posing a threat to the safety of the neighborhood, to the hill, and increased speeds of drivers. There is also currently a two-way yield that exists on Southeast Parkway that would pose a threat to the safety of all drivers with the increase of traffic. Currently, the majority of the south side of East Main Street is zoned NC, which is incredibly appropriate given it is next to the Ravina Park neighborhood. Setting the precedent for a zoning variance of the properties at 3025, 3029, and 3031 of East Main Street will only increase the likelihood of more properties becoming GC, resulting in the diminish of the solitude, privacy, and well-being of the residential neighborhood of Ravina Park. The increase in number of people present in the adjacent property due to the zoning change will likely bring an increase in criminal activity. The police activity in the GC zone that begins just beyond 34th Street is 5 times greater than the current activity in the GC zone. In order to help protect the privacy and safety, it has been discussed that a 6-foot fence go around my entire property that is adjacent to this Taco Bell. This is necessity to help maintain some property value, privacy, and help decrease foot traffic. A vinyl, not wood, solid fence should be installed. The vinyl fence is more appealing, lasts longer, is opaque, requires less maintenance, is fire resistant, and impenetrable to pests. Landscape trees, shrubbery would also help eliminate noise, increase privacy, and would be a necessity. We are opposing this variance of use because of the projected decrease in property value for residential homes that realtors have advised us on. Having a Taco Bell adjacent to the residential homes will only limit the clinical who are interested in homes, making the home more difficult to sell. My husband and I chose to start a family in Richmond, Indiana. We have lived in Richmond since 2006 and 2007, respectively, as students at Earlham College. We have raised our 3 children in Richmond, believe in this community, and work in places to enhance the lives of many who reside in Richmond, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Wayne County, and Earlham College. The proposal of Taco Bell in our backyard poses an immediate threat to our safety, welfare, well-being, privacy, and noise to our family. This would only force my family to consider other living options if this proposal were to be enacted. Recommendation, the proposed variances would allow for combination of the 3 parcels mentioned to build a new restaurant with a drive-up window. Variances of use must meet the following definition of a hardship. Hardship, a difficulty with regard to one's ability to improve land stemming from the development standards of this Unified Development Ordinance, which may or may not be subject to relief by means of a variance in and of themselves. Self-imposed situations and claims based on a perceived reduction or restriction on economic gain shall not be considered hardships. Self-imposed situations include the purchase of land with actual or constructive knowledge that for reasons other than physical characteristics of the property, the development standards herein will inhibit the desired improvement, any improvements initiated in violation of the standards of this Unified Development Ordinance, any result of land division requiring variance from the development standards of this Unified Development Ordinance in order to render that site buildable. The planning staff consulted with all city departments and utilities to determine any objections based on public health and safety. No objections were raised. Staff recommendation is for approval based on these findings. Fact of finding, variance of use for 3025, 3029, and 3031 East Main Street. 1, the approval of the variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because all UDO development standards will be met upon development of this land, and the proposed land is consistent with other properties along US 40 in the area. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because the proposal is consistent with other commercial land uses in the area. Development standards outlined during permitted process will ensure that development has the minimum impact possible on the neighboring properties. The need for variance of use does not arise from some condition peculiar to the property involved. There are no unique physical characteristics of the property that is peculiar to the property. Oh, this is the wrong one. Okay, I apologize. The need for the variance of use does arise from some condition peculiar to the property involved. The small lot sizes along the steep slopes on the rear portion of the property prohibit any new commercial developments on site due to setback and off-street parking requirements for businesses. Approval of this variance will allow for the lots to be merged and developed. 4, the strict application of terms of the ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought because the NC zoning district is severely limited in the types of commercial land uses that are permitted. Off-street parking for any future tenants that develop these properties will be very challenging to achieve given the topography and location of the site, meaning a drive-through is a reasonable land use in order to fit parking requirements while still allowing the site to be developed further. 5, the approval does not interfere substantially with the Richmond Comprehensive Plan because the Richmond Comprehensive Plan designates the strip of US 40 as commercial in the future land use map, and the proposed restaurant is in keeping with that designation. There were no written commitments. But to install a solid wood or vinyl 6-foot tall fence on or near the rear property lines to shield the development from neighboring residents.
Questions for planning staff?
Mr. Chair,
Sir.
I move that we approve BZA 8-2020 based on the finding of fact and the written commitments to build the vinyl fence.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Can I get the roll call, please?
Jeff Cook,
Aye.
Aaron Roberts,
Aye.
David Salazar.
Aye.
Motion does pass.
Any interested property owner who wishes to appeal this decision would have 30 days under Indiana Code 36-7-4 to appeal it to the Wayne Superior or Circuit Courts, and that is 30 days from the date of this decision today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The last new business we have is BZA 9-2020, petition of DWJW LLC. Petitioner, could step forward, please. State your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Yoo-hoo.
My name is Daniel Weigel. I reside at 2030 Chester Boulevard, number 60. I'm the landowner at 710 Northwest 5th Street. We're asking for a variance change from outdoor commercial to include light industrial and manufacturing. The building is, if you might be familiar with, is the old Ivy Tech building on Northwest 5th Street. It originally was built for manufacturing. They built stainless steel bolts and nuts for airplanes for years. After that, it became Stevens Wire Products, commercial. Then Mr. Mosey traded a building he had for that one, and then gave it to Ivy Tech, and I purchased it after that. So we'd kind of like to get back to the original. And the person that's interested in utilizing it is Rick Schrader, and he can speak to what he's going to use it for.
Hi, Rick Schrader, 355, 3588 Neawanna Road, Richmond, Indiana.
Thank you.
We're interested, and right now we have the lawnmower shop in there, and also floor care, but in the middle part of the building, we want to put a machine shop that would do machine aluminum with CNC mills. So,
Okay.
any questions on that?
Any questions for petitioners?
None.
No? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone here to speak in favor of BZA 9-2020, please step forward. Anyone here to speak in opposition of BZA 9-2020, please step forward. Seeing none, I will close public hearing, and if I get the staff report, please.
Thank you. Petition BZA 9-2020, the petition of DWJW LLC, owner and agent, request approval of a variance of use to allow light assembly and manufacturing in the OC district. Location is 710 Northwest 5th Street. Zoning is OC outdoor commercial. Use of the lot is commercial. Adjoining zoning, north is OC, south is OC, east is OC, west is OC. There were 22 adjacent property owners notified. One letter was returned to sender. And then we have one we received in favor of the petition by Charles and Wanda Druck at 602 Indiana Avenue. Recommendation, the proposed variances would allow for combination and expansion of the existing use of the property and allow for plastic mold extrusion manufacturing. Variances of use must meet the following definition of hardship. A difficulty with regard to one's ability to improve land stemming from the development standards of this Unified Development Ordinance, which may or may not be subject to relief by means of a variance. In and of themselves, self-imposed situations and claims based on a perceived reduction or restriction on economic gain shall not be considered hardships. Self-imposed situations include the purchase of land with actual or constructive knowledge that, for reasons other than physical characteristics of the property, the development standards herein will inhibit the desired improvement. Any improvement initiated in violation of the standards of this Unified Development Ordinance, any result of land division requiring variance from the development standards of this Unified Development Ordinance in order to render that site buildable. The planning staff consulted with all city departments and utilities to determine any objections based on public health and safety. No objections were raised. The staff recommendation is for approval based on these findings. Fact of finding, variance of use for 710 Northwest 5th Street. 1, the approval of the variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because the necessary structures and utilities are already in place for the proposed land use, and the new business at the location will not have any substantial changes to existing conditions on site. The use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because the use of the property will not be changing substantially from its current use, and other nearby properties are also commercial and or industrial in use. The need for variance of use does arise from some condition peculiar to the property involved. Infrastructure on site is constructed to accommodate this type of proposed land use, meaning other uses will be substantially more challenging to fit there. The strict application of terms of the ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought, because the building on site is constructed to allow the requested land use, and all necessary utilities are already in place. Another use of the property will be much harder to accommodate given the original intentions of the site. The approval does not interfere substantially with the Richmond Comprehensive Plan, because the Richmond Comprehensive Plan's future land use map designates this area as industrial land uses. No written comments. Commitments.
Any questions for planning staff?
None.
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
I move we approve BZA 9-2020 based on the finding of fact.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve BZA 9-2020. Call the roll, please.
Jeff Cook.
Aye.
Aaron Arden.
Aye.
Edward Salazar.
Aye.
Motion passed, approved, thank you. If we have no other business, the next BZA...
Would it be permissible for me to approach you and the board, sir?
For...
To clarify the intent of the, I've had a chance to read back over the publication. I believe we are in keeping with it for BZA 24-2020.
The motion has already been made to table it. I can go ahead and read this out loud from the publication. The petition of Richmond Mall LLC owner Rob Johnson, agent, requesting a variance of development standards to increase sign surface from 66 square feet to 211.87 square feet at 3801 East National Road, and then there's additional language there. So the outer perimeter of that 211.87 was what the legal ad caps. If it goes beyond that, goes above that, we would have to re-advertise it. So I'm going to leave that up to you to, I don't want to say untable it, but I would leave it up to you to let him speak.
Just to clarify, the cap of that sign would be considered,
the cap of the request.
The surface, correct.
The cap of the request tonight is 211.87 as advertised.
Right.
Because of the typo mentioned earlier, that's an increase in what was advertised, and so we would have to re-advertise. Again, if you want to let him speak to any clarification has already been tabled, and I'm a little hesitant to.
Right.
I'm a little hesitant to have an approval vote tonight, but it's up to you whether you let him speak or not.
Any comments from the board?
I think the issue is that it says total of 211, right? And that's not what the total square footage will be, because the 66 is the typo, correct? Because the current, because the current sign is already larger than 66, so that's the issue. So I don't think that we can move forward because the publication, there was a typo in the original submission, so we have to correct that and republish it, right?
I agree,
Yeah.
and this language that is in the publication was based off of their application.
Right. Like if it said we're increasing it a total of 211, that would be fine, but because it says to a total of...
It doesn't technically use the word total, but it says increasing the sign surface from 66 to...
Right.
211.87.
But they're actually asking for an increase of 211 added to what was previously.
So that,
it doesn't
that upper cap advertised needs to be increased to what the intent of the request was advertised.
I think we need to listen to council and not untable this, is my opinion.
I'll second that. I don't know if we vote on that.
We don't need a motion for that, do we?
I mean, again, it's the president's
Right.
prerogative to whether or not there is any additional speaking.
At this point in time, we've tabled it earlier, and I think the board is gonna stick with that earlier decision to table it. And I apologize for your time that you're gonna have to come back for, but at this point in time, we feel like that's best for the community and our obligations.
So is the petitioner required to come back if it's still on public hearing? Or would they just make the final vote at the next meeting?
He wouldn't have to, correct, but it's totally up to him. Would that be, I mean,
I've never been asked that question before. I would say that it's optional, it's always optional. I don't think we would necessarily fault the petitioner for not being here. It is strictly an advertisement. They might want to be here in case any public comes back, and then they would want to rebut anything that the public says. But I don't think that the staff or the board would wish to fault them for not being here if this is just a technical correction.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
correct. You understand what we just discussed there on that? And
Yes, sir.
I do apologize for your time, but that's our decision for this evening. I think that's where we need to stick with that. Thank you. Our next hearing will be Thursday, April 9th, 2020 at 7 p.m. The filing deadline was today for any new business. The May hearing will be Thursday, May 14th, 2020. Filing deadline for that will be April 9th, 2020 at 5 p.m. If there is no other business, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Meeting is adjourned.